Hello everybody, this is GeneralJannis, and today in Chaos Tactics I'm looking at the Screamers from the Chaos Demons, the Tzeentch flying fast attack unit. So with no further ado, let's get started. So today, the 2nd of April, I'm really happy that my pre-ordered Adeptus Exercises Warhammer arrived yesterday, so I could trade with this. No, but it's really a fun gimmick from Warhammer community for our April's Fool's Day, so I was really laughing uh, a lot when I watched the video. But in this video, as I said, reviewing the Screamers, looking at the stats and abilities, the damage output, the durability, comparison with some other options for Tzeentch demons and the Thousand Sounds, as they can take them as allies, and then some uses, buffs, combos before the final summary and conclusions. So with no further ado, let's get started. Looking at the Screamers' stats and abilities, we have the Screamers can be in units of 3 up to 6 Screamers. They are a fast attack unit and 25 points per model. The move is a hefty 16-inch, 4+ weapon skill. They don't have any ballistic skill. Strength 4, toughness 4, 3 wounds, 3 attacks, 8 leadership, and then they have the Tzeentch demonic save profile, 6+ save in melee, but then a very nice 3+ save versus ranged. And they only have a melee weapon, their Bite, which becomes a strength 6, AP -3, damage 2 weapon. And then they have two abilities. When you advance them, you can select to take them off the table, and then you can set it up again on the battlefield 9 inch away from enemy models. When they do this, they cannot charge, of course, but this is a very, let's say, they are already very fast, and you can use them basically to redeploy or deep strike during the game and also in the later turns, as opposed to arriving from deep strike, for example. And then they have the slashing dive. So if you fly over an enemy unit, you can if you didn't use the redeploy thing, then you roll a d6 for every of the screamer models that passed over the enemy. So maximum, let's say 6 if you do it with a full unit. On a 4+ for each dice, you would make the enemy unit suffer 1 mortal wound. So on average for a full unit, that would be 3 mortal wounds. And then importantly, they have the fly keyword and the core keyword, and they are not infantry; they are beasts. So all in all, a very fast flying and warping unit that can deal some extra mortal wounds, and of course, as a core unit, also the damage output can be buffed by several ways. Here in this graph, we can see the damage output for a melee in melee for 3 Screamer unit across a variety of the GeneralJannis 55 targets. As we can see here, these are the wounds that the 3 Screamers can do, not point corrected, so the actual wounds. And with a strength 3, AP -3, damage 2 profile, this is a decent damage output versus infantry units, especially 2 wound, for example, marine models. AP -3 makes them a difficult 6+ save. So all in all, for versus infantry, they can be quite efficient in melee. Versus vehicles, toughness 7, toughness 8 type of enemy units, they are not very efficient. But they could be killing, let's say, 4 guardsmen or 2.5 intercessors. Their damage 2 weapon is a bit lackluster versus, for example, Death Guard with its Custom Resilience. But all in all, so mainly, let's say, a decent melee damage output versus infantry targets. So there are some various ways to buff the damage output for the Screamers, but the Warp Joe's stratagem for 1 command point give them +1 to wound, and this can be especially good versus the tougher to wound vehicles. Also, they can get rerolls once to hit from the Lord of Change, for example, or reroll once to wound, or other buffs. Here, I just wanted to illustrate with the orange lines. The +1 to wound and the reroll once to hit can give you some nice boost on the damage output, killing, for example, 3.5 intercessors here, doing 4 or 5 wounds on some tough tanks with your 3-man Screamer unit. Looking now at the durability for the Screamers, not point corrected, they basically have the same profile as the defensive profile as the Flamers. And we can see, of course, because they have a different defensive profile with a 3+ save for ranged attacks that is non-modifiable, but in melee they only have a 6+ save. We see here for various type of enemy weapons firing or attacking them. We can see here for range it takes quite a lot of shots to kill a screamer. This is so, for example, 27 bolter shots with a hitting on 3+ to kill one screamer. But the same type of profile in melee, then it's only 11 attacks. And we can see here that they're a bit sensitive to in melee. Of course, they are not as durable, but with a 3+ save versus range, they are also quite good versus heavy weapons. The enemy would probably be wasting a lot of their melta shots and things like that if you can do your 3+ range saves. The table on the third column here is in range adding -1 to be hit from warp storm abilities, and here we can see that we get 33% more saving, more durable the number of shots we can take. Here we're also comparing two pink horrors, including a split on a 4+ in ranged and melee. So with 3 wounds for 25 points here, we get a higher save. But the screamers will probably be more exposed to melee. They don't have ranged weapons to shoot. If you want to do damage with them, they will be subject to the melee from the opponent. Here in this table, we are comparing overall per point comparison for the various Tzeentch demon units and also Thousand Suns, because we could use the screamers and some of these Tzeentch demons as allies for Thousand Suns. And we see here, for example, a unit of 3 flamers. This is point corrected, so it doesn't matter if they're 3 or 5. So the average damage output versus all the GeneralJannis 55 targets, point corrected to 100 points. We see, for example, the flamers are really excelling in short range damage with their flamers, not so strong in melee. We see the pink horrors and the blue horrors. They are not as good, of course, damage wise as the flamers. In melee, they are not very particularly strong, but we see here the screamers. They have 3.6 wounds on average per 100 points. Mostly, if you use them mostly versus infantry, they can do something. And we can see the durability. This is the average shots from light weaponry and the heavy weaponry. You can see the previous table, and here I also took the average if it was melee and ranged together. So quite decent saving profiles here. And we see, of course, the screamers the highest damage output of the units from the Tzeentch demons. If we now start comparing to some of the Thousand Suns units, we have, for example, the Rubric Marines with flamers or bolters. They are, of course, also better at shooting, but not so strong in melee damage output. And we see the Scaraboccle Terminators. They are decent also in melee, but the screamers here can offer more value in melee than the Scaraboccle Terminators. But if we compare to something like the Thousand Sun Chaos Spawn for 21 points, this is also a very cheap unit that you also can take in ones. This has more damage output per point than the screamers. But in all cases, the screamer can be faster than a Chaos Spawn. Looking now at some uses, buffs, and combos for the screamers. The use, of course, their very high movement, the flying profile, 16 inches, can get them where they are needed on the tabletop. This can help you score placement secondaries like engage on all fronts or behind enemy lines, or the reality rebels for the chaos demons. The advance and redeploy can, if your opponents, you cannot charge after doing this, but you can take advantage of holes or some places in your enemy lines that you maybe can advance a screamer unit, and then you can just redeploy in their deployment zone or redeploying some objective, maybe towards the end of the game where there is more room and the opponent maybe cannot screen so easily. It's not infantry, so it cannot do some of the type of actions like raising banners and things like that. And as we said, if you can fly over some enemy units, you can roll to add mortal wounds on average with a six screamer unit flying over an enemy. That would give them 3 mortal wounds. And in this the map example here, I've illustrated around 16 inches. You can, starting, let's say, from your deployment zone with 3 screamer units, you could be on all quarters, advancing maybe also into your enemy's deployment zone. 16 inches can get you a long way. For various buffs, the warp storms. Not so many of the Tzeentch items really help melee, but the descending shadow for warp storm for the generic, let's say, demons, for 3 warp storm points, it gives them -1 to be hit outside of 12 inches. So this makes them even stronger in ranged. Durability 3+ save, and the enemy has tougher ways to hit them. From the Tzeentch, the rampant mutation, for 3 points, you can, the 6 is to wound in melee, deals 1 extra mortal wound, max 3 per enemy unit, and this can be really strong to add some more mortal wound damage for your screamers. The Warp Jaws stratagem for 1 command point gives them +1 wound to melee with their strength 6 weapon, especially when attacking some toughness 6, 7, 8 things. Then this could be really helpful for 1 command point. And as a core unit, it can get reroll 1s to hit from the Lords, reroll 1s to wound from Heralds, like the Fate Schemer. And the Fate Schemer has a nice ability that you can select a Screamer unit to get 6s to hit auto wound, again bypassing, let's say, some of the tougher wound rolls. But most of the other Tzeentch demon buffs are related to shooting. So, as an allied patrol, 4000 Suns, as an allied unit, the Screamers could maybe benefit the 1000 Suns to all in all add some Tzeentch demon characters to get access to more spells. Typically, before at least the nerf on the Flamers, the Flamer units were added for some very high shooting damage output, and maybe the Screamers could now be an interesting flavor option for maybe more casual games. You have a 75-point minimum to get a three-man squad on the table. You get a fast unit, some melee damage, maybe move and block, screen the rest of the army like rubrics that you don't want to get charged. If you're facing something like, let's say, World Eaters, maybe the Screamers could give you some nice fast, let's say, blocking unit. You can, if you are using Cult of Duplicity with 1000 Suns, you can reposition one of your units. Now with the Screamers on, if you add some Screamers, you have more opportunities to do so every turn. So an example patrol here for 420 points could be the Fate Schemer, that also has some nice, let's say, some nice synergy with the Screamers, taking 450 points, taking the Bolt of Change, psychic power, infernal flames to also add to the wound rolls. For the troops, the cheapest choice is the Blue Horrors, setting you back 70 points. You can take a big squad of Flamers, 125 points here, and here I added 1 unit of 3 Screamers here. But probably right now it looks like more for the meta that 1000 Suns go more mono decks and are a bit suffering now in Arks of Omen. Reaching to the summary and final thoughts, the Screamers are of course a very fast Tzeentch demon flying unit that can probably go where you need it to be on the tabletop. Decent melee damage output, especially versus infantry. It's quite squishy in melee with a 6+ Tzeentch save, but it can also be buffed to also do some more damage in melee. Nice durability, like most Tzeentch demons in versus ranged attacks. The 3+ Tzeentchian save can really be frustrating for the opponent, and they have this nice ability for the in-build. When they advance, they could reappear, redeploying basically on the tabletop, forcing your opponent maybe to think more of how he leaves his backfield objective. So this concludes this video about the Screamers. What is your experience? Do you have any comments or suggestions for this video? Please let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please press like and subscribe to my channel. If you have further questions, suggestions for videos, please visit our Discord channel, links below. And if you want to further support my effort, visit my Patreon page or become a YouTube member. And with these words, GeneralJannis is signing out. Stay safe out there, and bye-bye.